Hi everyone, my name is Billy from Piano and Pies, and this video is all about chords, but more specifically chord inversions. Now maybe you've heard the term before, maybe you've heard someone talk about it, but this is going to be all about what they are, why we use them, how we can use them, and I'll give you some examples of how you can use chord inversions in your playing, and I'll give you some famous songs that actually use them as well. So let's give it a go. So, first of all, what is an inversion? So, a chord inversion, to put it very simply, is just the order of the chord, as in the notes of a chord, and rearranging them slightly. So, for example, one of the chords that you may know is C major. If you don't know it, C major is a note of C at the bottom, then an E, then a G. That's a bog standard C major chord. Now we call that order of C major root position when you have a chord, let's say C major, and the C is at the bottom. That's the C major root position. Now imagine if I take this C note and I put it an octave higher, which just means the next C up from there. You might think that's a different chord. It's actually the same chord, but now we're using inversions, and that is specifically C major first inversion, where the E is now at the bottom, G is where it is, and C is now at the top. Now it still has the same quality, but it's just got a slightly different sound. Here it is. So that's C major first inversion, but we can go further. There's the first inversion that we just played. If I take the E and move that an octave higher, up to here, we get C major second inversion. Finally, if we take this G, which has stayed the same all the way through, and move that an octave higher, you might think, hey, that's a C major third inversion, right? No, we've got C major root position again. It's just an octave higher than wrote, C, E, G. I played it down here earlier, and there it is there. So we've cycled through the notes enough to get back to root position. So when you have a 3-note chord, you can only have technically 2 extensions, 2 inversions from the root. So you'd have root, first inversion, second inversion. Then you're back to root, first inversion, second inversion, root, first inversion, off the camera. So that is in essence what an inversion is. Now let's look at why we use inversions. So when we use inversions, there's 2 things I'm looking for. First of all, to make life easy for moving from one chord to the next chord. And second of all, to look for a good sound. And inversions play a massive part in that. So for example, let's just say I'm playing a C major chord and I want to move to a G major chord. You can see my hand has to shift up to there. That's C major root position and G major root position. G, B, D, if you're not too sure what a G major chord is. Now, there is an easier way to play that. And also, it could sound better, depends on the context of the song. Now, the first thing you do when you want to start using inversions, you think, what notes are the same between 2 chords? Because lots of different chords have some of the same letters. For example, C major has a G at the top. G major has a G. They both share this G note. All the other notes are different. However, G also has a B and a D. Try and remember that, B and D. So, there's my C major chord again. I want to get to G major using an inversion so I don't have to move my hand around. That's my goal. So, because C and G share the G, that guy's going to stay where he is. That finger's staying exactly in place. Now I need to get this C and E to a B and a D. Now hold the phone. C and B are next door to each other, so I could just move that finger down. And I need to get to a D from this E. Now D is next door. If I do that and then play the notes, that is a G major chord. It's just one of the inversions. For example, up here, G major, G, B, D. It's now lower, but that's still fine. And it's an inversion. There's the B, there's the D, and the G's at the top. So this one here is what you call G major first inversion. Now when I go back and forth between C and G, Can you see how close how my hand doesn't have to move anywhere? It doesn't move up here. It just moves one note down for a couple of the notes. Not only does that make it far easier for either hand to play, but also, in my opinion, it sounds quite nice. It kind of gives a level of consistency. All the notes are in the same area of the piano rather than jumping. Now again, that's a subjective opinion. Sometimes that might sound really good. It depends on the circumstance. So don't take that one as a fact that you must follow. But I find that in most times, moving close by really, really helps. So that's how we can do it in an example. And you can just go further from that. It also works for when you have larger chords as well. So for example, if I've got a C major 7 chord, you'll notice I'm playing 4 notes there. If you're not familiar with how sevenths work, basically all I've done is added on a B note. I've got C major 7, so I've got C, E, G and B. And chords inversions can work in the same way. So if I move C up to there, there's first inversion of C major 7. If I move the E up to the top, C major 7, second inversion. Move the G up, there's C major 7 in the second inversion, and then, third inversion. And finally, if I go up to there, I'm back to root position. So, that's how it can work in extended chords. So, let's use a real-world example where chord inversions come into use. Now, you may know Adele's song, Someone Like You. It sounds a bit like this. And so on. Now, the first thing I did, I played a pattern using these 3 notes. Now, if you were to play them all together, that's what we call an A major chord. A, C sharp, and E. What happens is, I keep those 2 notes the same, but instead of playing an A, partway through I change it to an A flat. Now that, if you put this note here, the A flat, we're going to call it a G sharp now, and move it up to an octave higher, that is what you call a C sharp minor chord. So whoever plays the piano for Adele chose an A major chord and a C sharp minor chord. But use the inversion because 2 of the notes are exactly the same between those 2 chords. A, C sharp minor, both have C sharp and an E. And the only difference between the chord is an A goes down to a flat, or we can call that a G sharp as well. So instead of going like this, they take the G sharp and move it down to use that position, that inversion. So that's a C sharp minor second inversion. And as you can tell, it sounds way better to do that rather than this. Both are technically the same chords, A to C sharp minor, but the use of inversions means the chord is staying roughly in the same area of the piano, like I mentioned earlier, and it keeps a consistent sound again, as I mentioned earlier, and then it sounds really nice and it makes it far easier to play as well. So there's a real world example. There are endless out there. If you can think of any, let me know in the description, and then I might give a demonstration in the future. So, in a nutshell, that's what chord inversions are all about. I've very quickly gone over a lot of information there. I would advise just going back and just double checking and coming up with some ideas yourself. See if you can find 2 chords and try and go from one to the next with as little hand movement as possible. I spent a lot of time doing that when I first started learning the piano, and it's paid off dividends during my playing in the future and now. So give that a try. If there's any questions, feel free to write them in the description. I'll be happy to answer them, or even make a question and answer video in the future. However, if you really enjoyed the video, you know what to do. Like and subscribe, comment as much as you can. It just helps grow the channel. I'm aiming to get 500 subs by the end of the month. Nearly on course for it. I really appreciate if you could help out on that one. If you'd also like to help out, I also have a Buy Me a Coffee link below. Just keeps me going through all the video making, as well as a Patreon page as well. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.